Sean P. Diddy Combs, another lawsuit being filed against him. This coming after the federal indictment in the recent weeks as he faces a lawsuit of more than 100 people and allegations of sexual abuse and sexual assault.
He talked to Chaz when we was at the China Club one time. Yo, why you got your security nigga around you like that? I wasn't no security nigga. What are you talking about? You understand what I'm saying? Laughing and playing like he was saying something. And I was about to step to him. Yo, bro, what people don't understand is that I was same gang first. I'm Gene Deal, but I'm same gang.
Kendrick Lamar and Diddy's beef has always simmered beneath the surface, starting with diss tracks and subtle jabs in the music. But today, it exploded like never before. Just moments ago, the courtroom erupted as Kendrick dropped a shocking revelation about Sean Diddy Combs. Gasps filled the room, phones were out, and even the judge struggled to keep order. Kendrick didn't hold back. What he said caught everyone off guard, but it doesn't stop there. Kendrick hinted that Diddy isn't the only one involved. Other big names in the music industry are now being dragged into the spotlight. Subpoenas are flying, and the drama is only heating up. Why now? What triggered Kendrick to finally speak? And who's next? This isn't just rap beef, it's turning into a full-blown industry scandal. Let's take a look at the very beginning of what just happened. The diss track that ignited one of the hottest beefs in recent hip-hop history between Kendrick Lamar and Sean Diddy Combs.
That I put out that I'm actually from the West Coast, and the aggression that we have in our music, I can't run from that. You know, whether it be a control verse, whether it be Black or the Berry, that's all. I'm influenced by Cube. I'm influenced by Dre.
What started as a few subtle jabs and competitive tension in the past suddenly exploded into a full-blown war, with Kendrick dropping a ruthless, no-holds-barred track that's shaking the industry to its core. For years, Kendrick and Diddy's relationship hovered on a knife's edge. Both respected for their influence and success, their interactions were laced with rivalry but never openly hostile. Until now. Kendrick's new track tore away the veil, revealing grievances fans never saw coming. From the first bars, Kendrick set the tone. This wasn't just about music, it was personal. He took aim at Diddy's empire building, accusing him of manipulating artists and profiting off their struggles while hiding behind a flashy image. But the real shocker came on the hook. Kendrick hinted at a dark moment where Diddy betrayed him. Something deeply private, something that fractured trust. The crowd listening could feel the weight behind every word, and social media exploded with fans trying to decode what exactly had happened. Was it a business deal gone wrong? A personal betrayal? Kendrick left it deliberately vague but heavy with meaning. The track didn't just stop at Diddy. Kendrick dropped subtle hints that other big industry players were involved, suggesting a web of power and control that extends far beyond one man.
Now you think about Drake right now, and you think about Kendrick Lamar. That's looking about the same as Biggie, Kendrick. Biggie, Kendrick, Tupac, Drake. Think about the comparisons. Yep. Imagine, be a gangster playing, imagine.
Comparisons.
If the same fate that befell Biggie and Tupac happened to Drake and Kendrick.
Just imagine.
And as messy as Drake is right now, I can almost bet that there's somebody that wants to turn his faucet off.
This wasn't just a beef between two icons. It was an expose on the dark politics of the industry. What makes this even spicier is that subpoenas are reportedly flying, and the drama is spilling out of the studio and into the courtroom. Sources close to the situation reveal investigations are underway, and a few surprising names could be dragged into the scandal. This track sparked a powder keg that might lead to legal battles, public revelations, and a massive shakeup in hip-hop power dynamics. Until now. Kendrick Lamar's recent courtroom revelations didn't just stir up old drama, they cracked open a vault of secrets many believed would never see daylight. While the initial diss track served as a warning shot, his testimony made it clear. Kendrick wasn't just airing grievances. He was naming names and pointing fingers at an entire system of exploitation, corruption, and unchecked power within the music industry. Once on the stand, Kendrick reportedly described an incident that had haunted him for years, a deeply personal betrayal by Diddy, one that went far beyond industry politics. He didn't reveal every detail, but the weight of his words was enough to make the courtroom erupt. According to inside sources, Kendrick hinted at manipulation, coercion, and threats made behind closed doors, moments that reshaped how he saw the industry and some of its biggest players. But what made the testimony so explosive wasn't just what Kendrick said about Diddy, it was who else he pulled into the conversation. Without naming them outright, he dropped enough breadcrumbs to suggest that several well-known executives and artists were complicit in a web of abuse and control. "They hide in the shadows and pull the strings," he said, echoing the dark imagery from his track. It was a statement that sent ripples through the industry as people began speculating who else might be implicated. The court is now flooded with subpoenas and investigations that stretch far beyond Kendrick's original claims. Testimonies from other artists and insiders have begun to corroborate a disturbing pattern surrounding Diddy. Allegations of sexual abuse, trafficking, and violent retaliation. Kid Cudi, for instance, revealed in his statement that after he began dating Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex, his home was broken into and his car mysteriously exploded. He didn't say it outright, but the implication was clear.
Cudi, did he do it?
The jurors saw the actual cut, the hole in his Porsche, and then they saw the damage done from that Molotov cocktail where the red interior is ruined and darkened by the fire that started in his car. Cudi, throughout his testimony, insinuated that it was Combs.
Meanwhile, Cassie herself has accused Diddy of years of physical and emotional abuse, and multiple lawsuits now circle his name. Dawn Richard, a former member of Danity Kane and once part of Diddy's label, also stepped forward, sharing harrowing accounts of controlling behavior and emotional manipulation.
Dawn Richard was there along with Kalina Harper. They were in a trio with Sean Combs called Danity Kane, it was Diddy Dirty Money. She was in multiple groups with Sean Combs, and she saw Sean Combs come down, attempt to hit Cassie with a frying pan, and then saw him drag her upstairs, and she heard the sounds of beating. But one thing that was significant about Richard's testimony is this was the first time we saw a really aggressive cross-examination from Combs' team. They were poking holes in her story, Errol, showing different times that she told it. There were interviews with the government and how the narrative changed a bit each time. But one thing that stood out to me is she said that she tells the story as she remembers it, and that the more she thinks about that time, the more she has remembered that it was a really difficult moment in time for her, a terrible work environment.
Though Kendrick was measured and metaphorical in parts of his statement, insiders close to the proceedings and those familiar with the subpoenas say several names have started to emerge. And if even half the whispers prove true, hip-hop, and perhaps the wider entertainment industry, is on the edge of a reckoning. One of the most immediate names drawing speculation is Jimmy Iovine, the legendary record executive who played a pivotal role in shaping Interscope and Beats by Dr. Kendrick never mentioned him directly, but references to the White Knight who sells silence with sound have been interpreted by many as a veiled nod to Iovine's storied connections and long-standing ties with both Diddy and Dr. Dre sources say Kendrick's legal team is exploring patterns of financial entanglement and whether executives like Iovine turned a blind eye to abuse to protect business interests. L.A. Reid is another name being circulated. A former executive powerhouse behind LaFace Records and Epic Records, Reid has faced allegations in the past about fostering toxic workplace environments, especially involving young female artists. In Kendrick's testimony, he reportedly referred to A&R devils in silk ties, trading favors like poker chips, which attorneys connected to ongoing investigations believed to be a thinly veiled indictment of powerful gatekeepers who helped maintain the abusive status quo. Reid's name isn't in the open yet, but it's being whispered behind courtroom doors. Perhaps more chillingly, Kendrick made reference to a trio of kings who used fear like currency. Investigators believe this might point toward a coalition of high-ranking executives, including moguls from both hip-hop and mainstream pop, who quietly upheld each other's reputations while silencing victims and critics. One of the names being connected to this trio is Clive Davis, a figure often revered for his influence but not immune to criticism regarding the machinery he helped sustain. Additionally, questions are now being raised about Jay-Z's role in all of this, not as a direct perpetrator, but as a potential enabler. Kendrick's different song lyrics are now being parsed as a possible indictment of those who had the power to intervene, but chose instead to preserve their positions within the hierarchy. Jay-Z's affiliation with Diddy through various business ventures, including their high-profile appearances together at Roc Nation events and mogul panels, is under new scrutiny.
And many entities involved. And we're going to follow this evidence wherever it takes us. We will find the silent accomplices. We will expose the enablers who enabled this conduct behind closed doors. We will pursue this matter no matter who the evidence implicates.
Lucian Grange, the CEO of Universal Music Group, is reportedly named in at least one subpoena issued in relation to Kendrick's testimony. Known for being one of the most powerful figures in the global music industry, Grange's name came up as Kendrick described the men behind the glass, never seen, always signing checks. This is believed to point at top-tier executives who profit from artist labor while remaining detached from the ethical consequences of the industry's darker corridors. A more surprising mention, though still shrouded in rumor, is that of Dr. Dr., once mentor to Kendrick and closely tied to both Diddy and Jimmy Iovine, Dre's silence has been deafening.
What I think is doing whatever you need to do to become successful. It takes focus, determination, and playing the game a little harder than everybody around you. Sean P. Diddy Combs is a hustler. As a matter of fact, he's what I call an extreme hustler. He's a producer, a performer, an actor. He has created a clothing empire, and he's also responsible for one of my favorite vodkas.
Some argue Kendrick's mention was metaphorical, reflecting a broader sense of betrayal by those closest to him. But others believe there may be deeper, undisclosed grievances still to surface. Adding further weight, Andre Harrell, the late founder of Uptown Records and mentor to Diddy, was alluded to in Kendrick's commentary on generational shadows, pointing to patterns of exploitation passed down through decades. While Harrell can't speak to the allegations, his name is part of the broader conversation about legacy, power, and what behaviors have been normalized in the pursuit of fame. And finally, whispers are now swirling around Scooter Braun, whose empire spans across genres and whose aggressive management style has drawn both acclaim and criticism. Kendrick's cryptic jab at the smiling snake who sells redemption in stadiums has been interpreted by some as a reference to Braun's public reinventions and quiet influence behind the scenes. It's unclear whether Braun will face legal consequences, but industry insiders are watching closely. Kendrick's words aren't just holding one man accountable, they're dragging a legacy of betrayal, power plays, and silence back into the light. It's impossible to talk about Diddy's history without going all the way back to the 1990s, to the East Coast-West Coast feud that defined an era. Though Kendrick was still a child during the height of the rivalry between Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., the war's fallout loomed large over the West Coast, especially in places like Compton. In court, Kendrick referenced a war started before my voice found rhythm, a haunting line that many took as a nod to the violence, mistrust, and unanswered questions that emerged from that era, especially those that have long swirled around Diddy. His reference wasn't about nostalgia, it was about unfinished business. By tying his own conflict to that foundational rupture in hip-hop, Kendrick reminded everyone that some wounds were never truly closed. From that deep historical tension, the focus begins to shift forward to one of the most talked-about rivalries of the last decade, Kendrick versus Drake. What started as competitive tension and lyrical jabs has now evolved into something far more personal and politically charged. Their 2024 exchange of diss tracks reignited the feud, but Kendrick's recent verse elevated it beyond music. Drake may be the poster child for modern-day success, But that success, in Kendrick's view, comes from playing by the same compromised rules.
Drake's legal team is celebrating a preliminary win. A federal judge has ruled the entertainer's attorneys can have access to Kendrick Lamar's contract and other sensitive information. The ruling's part of Drake's defamation lawsuit against Universal Music Group. Though Lamar is not a defendant himself in the case, it centers around the distribution and promotion of the song Not Like Us, which features some scathing lyrics about Drake.
What used to be friendly fire between lyrical giants is now being recast as a clash between someone protecting the system and someone trying to burn it down. That sense of betrayal only deepens when Kendrick's strained history with Kanye West is brought into the picture. Once collaborators and mutual admirers, the relationship between the two cooled over the years and now feels irreparably fractured. Kendrick didn't name Kanye directly in his testimony or track, but some lines carried a tone unmistakably linked to Ye's polarizing presence. Whether he's accusing Kanye of hypocrisy, complicity, or simply disappointment, the message is clear. Even those who once seemed like visionaries have, in Kendrick's eyes, fallen prey to the industry's darker forces. The fallout between the two may not be as explosive as his other feuds, but it carries emotional weight, a quiet heartbreak that underscores Kendrick's larger feeling of isolation within the elite. This theme continues as eyes turn to Top Dog Entertainment, Kendrick's former label and artistic home. When Kendrick left TDE in 2021, it appeared respectful, even celebratory. But with recent revelations casting a critical light on music industry politics and betrayal, fans are beginning to wonder if there was more to the departure than artistic freedom. Kendrick hasn't said anything directly against his former team, but his tone has shifted. There's a noticeable absence of the brotherhood and mutual praise that once defined their bond. His reference to contracts wrapped in smiles and silence hinted that even the places he once trusted weren't immune to the rot he's exposing. Whether something specific happened behind closed doors or whether he simply saw a future he didn't want to be part of, the cracks in that once solid foundation are now impossible to ignore. And then there's the ghost that never truly left the room, Suge Knight. Though currently imprisoned, Suge's legacy still looms large over the industry. Whether his lyrics meant literally or symbolically, the implication is clear. The power structures that shaped the violent and oppressive past of hip-hop may not be as far removed from the present as we'd like to think. Kendrick's point seems to be that the same cycle of fear, control, and unchecked dominance continues, just with different faces wearing cleaner suits. One by one, these past conflicts aren't just coming back for dramatic effect, they're being woven into a much bigger picture. Kendrick isn't just reigniting old feuds for entertainment. He's showing how they all tie together. Each rift, each betrayal, each silence, whether from Diddy, Drake, Ye, TDE, or Suge, fits into a larger puzzle of manipulation, exploitation, and power. The past isn't staying in the past, it's bleeding into the present, and Kendrick seems determined to force a reckoning, no matter how many legends he has to confront along the way. Behind the scenes, people are talking. Artists, executives, former collaborators, assistants, bodyguards. They've kept their heads down for years, but now, with Kendrick Lamar shining a harsh light on everything long buried, they're stepping forward, one by one. And the message from many of them is chillingly consistent. We knew this day was coming. Some speak anonymously, afraid of retaliation. Others are beginning to attach their names, emboldened by Kendrick's public stand. Either way, the tone is no longer shock or disbelief. It's recognition, a quiet confirmation that what's now unfolding in court and across social media is not new. It's just finally visible. One former label employee who worked closely with Bad Boy in the early 2000s described a culture of fear masked as opulence.
We're hearing from those who worked with Diddy in a professional capacity. They spoke to the Daily Beast for this revealing article. There were 5 employees who came forward and they spoke to a magazine. They did want to reveal their identities, though. They said that they had fear of retribution.
There was always something lurking under the surface, they said. Deals that didn't make sense, artists who just disappeared, sudden silences after people asked too many questions. You didn't say Diddy's name out loud unless it was praise. That's just how it was. They paused before adding, Kendrick's not saying anything we didn't already know. He's just saying it louder. It's not just the veterans speaking up. Younger artists, some who never signed to Diddy but orbited the industry through his events, parties, and business circles, are beginning to share eerily similar stories. One up-and-coming R&B singer recalled being invited to a private mentorship dinner with Diddy that quickly felt more like an audition for loyalty than a career opportunity. These whispers are becoming louder as others corroborate the same patterns: manipulation, coercion, and the careful grooming of public perception. One former assistant described witnessing contract negotiations that were more like veiled threats. If someone didn't want to sign, there were always consequences. Even security staff and personal drivers, often the invisible witnesses to a celebrity's real life, are starting to talk.
He needed somebody that was strong, that was going to, look out for his best interest. And because he was same gang at the time, I was doing that.
Well, then in 1991, there was the Heavy D and Puff Daddy celebrity basketball game.
City College tragedy.
One ex-assistant who worked for multiple artists associated with Bad Boy shared, there were places we weren't allowed to ask about, people we picked up who didn't speak, whole nights erased from the schedule. If you asked too many questions, you were out, fired the next morning. Legal experts and industry insiders alike are beginning to dissect the potential consequences. There's growing consensus that this case may be on the verge of transcending celebrity gossip and entering the realm of landmark litigation. The convergence of high-profile testimony, corroborating witnesses, and historical allegations is forming a picture that many legal professionals interpret as the early stages of something far bigger than a civil suit or individual defamation claim. Much of the legal interest now hinges on one crucial element: the pattern. Kendrick's testimony painted not just a portrait of personal betrayal, but hinted at a long-standing system of coercion, manipulation, and power abuse that has existed in plain sight. For years, stories circulated in whispers about artists pushed into silence, contracts cloaked in intimidation, and unspoken rules enforced by gatekeepers. Now, with Kendrick opening the floodgates, those whispers are taking legal form. The growing list of corroborating voices is also fueling a potential transformation of the case's scope. The re-emergence of past lawsuits and testimonies, including claims made by Cassie Ventura regarding and surveillance, or the unsettling circumstances around the reported explosion near Kid Cudi's residence, are beginning to be viewed in a broader, interconnected context.
So in that particular instance, he didn't talk specifically about seeing any physical abuse being done, but he also said that Cassie yelled out, "Isn't anybody seeing this?" And then the prosecutor said, "Why didn't you do something?" And he said, "I was 23 years old. I thought I had this great fortune of working with an icon," and he didn't feel like it was his place to step in. He also said no one on that plane stepped in, but he could not give details specifically about any bruises or things that he saw in that particular instance. But then he described seeing Cassie Ventura with her, I believe he described her hand sort of in her head, on her head. He also described another instance where he went to the home of Combs, and Combs called him up on the intercom for something, and he said Cassie Ventura was on the bed and it looked like she had a bruise on her forehead.
Individually, each accusation could be dismissed as isolated. Together, they begin to sketch a network of influence and intimidation that spans years and involves numerous players. The implications here are not just reputational, they're legal. Investigators are said to be reviewing whether these allegations meet the criteria for a wide-ranging conspiracy or enterprise. With multiple testimonies pointing toward a recurring set of tactics, emotional and physical manipulation, surveillance, retaliation, and NDA-driven silencing, legal analysts suggest that the situation could evolve into a federal-level investigation. If systemic abuse is uncovered, it could result in criminal charges far beyond what anyone initially anticipated when the first diss track dropped. Meanwhile, the legal teams involved are reportedly bracing for what lies ahead. Several figures linked directly or indirectly to the case have already begun hiring high-powered defense attorneys, indicating they expect more than just bad press. Litigation teams are working overtime to control narratives, scrub damaging evidence, and prepare for depositions. The public has only seen fragments of what's unfolding. Sealed court documents, internal communications, and pending testimony are expected to reveal far more. As for Kendrick himself, his role is shifting from whistleblower to potential star witness in what could become a defining legal moment for the industry. With nothing to promote, no album cycle to support, and no visible motive beyond setting the record straight, his credibility has been bolstered rather than questioned. And unlike many artists before him, Kendrick appears protected by a level of autonomy that makes retaliation more difficult, financial independence, industry distance, and cultural capital that's difficult to erode. All eyes are now on the calendar. Several court dates are already on the books for the coming months, with others in the works. Preliminary hearings and motions are expected to begin soon, particularly surrounding reopened civil suits linked to prior settlements. Legal observers anticipate attempts to consolidate some cases, while others may remain separate to allow for targeted investigation. Key dates over the next 90 days include hearings related to Cassie Ventura's previous case, which may resurface under new scrutiny, and the deposition of 2 additional music industry insiders who are rumored to possess damning information about past incidents involving Diddy and affiliated business entities.
Defense has been asking Ventura more about her 2018 rape allegation against Combs, Ventura's drug use, her mental health problems, and a 2014 threat that she made to a man who claimed he had seen a sexually explicit tape of her, also raised in court. The defense at one point asking Ventura, quote, "Do you still have love for him?" referring to Combs, and Ventura answered by saying, quote, "I have love for the past and what it was."
Additionally, there are murmurs of a grand jury being convened in relation to the broader network of allegations, an indication that prosecutors are considering pursuing criminal charges if enough evidence emerges. Simultaneously, legal analysts warn that delays and deflections are almost guaranteed. With this many powerful individuals potentially implicated, procedural maneuvers, motions to dismiss, claims of defamation, and jurisdictional disputes are expected to flood the court. The legal strategy from the defense side will likely involve discrediting accusers, controlling media narratives, and attempting to isolate incidents to prevent a larger pattern from being legally recognized. Despite that, the momentum feels different this time. The cultural tide has shifted. Public tolerance for institutional silence has waned, and social media has become a tool for pressure and transparency. In this new landscape, even the most powerful figures are finding it harder to hide behind polished PR and legal firewalls. The Kendrick-Diddy scandal, once assumed to be a temporary media flare-up, is now being treated with the gravity of a potential reckoning.